this is Andre. By itself, the Loupé does not do MIDI, but it does transmit pulse sync, which can be converted into MIDI clock using a number of different devices. In this video, we're going to be using the Arturia Keystep. Now, the connections are pretty straightforward, but there are a couple of settings you want to be aware of. On the Loupé, the sync division parameter should be set to 24 ppq. The output for sync out on Loupé is 1/4 inch. The input that we're going to be using on the Arturia is the sync in, which is an 1/8 inch connection. So you want to make sure that you can go from a 1/4 inch to an 1/8 inch in some way. I used both mono and stereo cables and was able to get it happening. I used a plain old-fashioned headphone adapter jack to turn an 1/8 inch cable into a 1/4 inch connection for the Loupé. On the back of the Keystep, there's a pair of dip switches that assign how it's handling sync, and this needs to be set to sync in. Even though we're transmitting sync out from the Keystep for MIDI control, it still needs to be looking at the sync input in order to figure out what it's converting in the first place. So when you're sending pulse sync from the Loupé into the sync input jack, please make sure that you have the dip switches configured to sync in. Now in this video, the Arturia is sending MIDI to Ableton Live, and we're sending that out of the USB port. You could also send that out of the actual 5-pin MIDI output if you need to. All right, we have the Loupé sending sync into the Keystep. The Keystep is then converting that into MIDI sync and sending that to Ableton Live. We have this beat in Ableton. The fast hi-hats are right at the beginning, specifically to help us keep track of where the downbeat is, because as you'll see, keeping track of where one is and having one be the same on both the Loupé and Ableton is an important thing. So I'm going to stop this, going to switch this over to external sync, turn my volume up, and let's just record a note. So as you can hear, it takes it a second to lock in, figure out what's going on. I know how it feels. But there we go. If I overdub using the drums as reference, all right, stop that. Now, it's important to press the stop button on the transport on the Keystep before you start looping again. I haven't done that. Let's see why it's important to do that. I'm going to record a new loop from scratch. So do you hear now how the downbeat is off between the Loupé and Ableton? The fast hi-hats are not happening right when I played that note, and that note is right on beat 1 as far as the Loupé is concerned. So in order to prevent that from happening, when you record your initial loop, you want to stop the transport. What you can also do is reset the timing between the Loupé and Ableton in terms of where the apparent downbeat is, just by pressing the stop button. Missed it a little bit. There we go. There we go. So now, basically, pressing that becomes the new downbeat as far as Ableton is concerned. So I'm going to overdub a little more on top of that. And now, I'm deliberately going to change the downbeat in quasi-random ways. Takes a second to figure things out. There we go. So now we're synced up, but we've changed where the apparent downbeat is. And I'm just going to press it on a few different spots within the loop so we can change how Ableton is treating the loop in terms of where beat 1 is. There we go. Now we're back down to that low note as beat 1. There we go. And one more just totally randomly. Not crazy about it. That's pretty good. All right, this being the Loupé, we can also have a lot of fun with changing the length of the loop while keeping the sync intact. So now I'm switching to a game where we can expand and contract the length of the loop locked to these subdivisions of the loop. Easier to demonstrate than to talk about, so now we've split this into 5 equivalent subdivisions, but Ableton is still doing its thing. So now the loop is in some kind of weird 5/8 kind of thing, but the drums are still in 4/4. And more importantly, the drums are treating the tempo from the Loupé as if it's still in 4/4. So you can do all kinds of stuff as far as changing the number of subdivisions or cycles that are currently in the loop, but the drums are going to keep doing their thing. So now we have 7 in the Loupé. Let's go down to shorter. Let's add a couple of things. Don't want to knock the camera stand. There we go. Re-multiply down. Let's try scrolling through that. All right, I'm gonna bring feedback down and overdub new stuff on this. Bring feedback all the way down. All right, we are going to mess with things even more. Now we are going to change the length of the loop in the Loupé, not based on subdivisions of the original loop length, but based on a few milliseconds at a time. And it takes Ableton a second, but it eventually locks in with the new loop length. So we're progressively slowing it down by inserting more and more length into the loop. And we can shorten the loop as well. I like that. I'm gonna add to that. There we go. Ooh, I like that. I'm going to use the drums to help me keep track of what's going on. And I'm going to try and do something a little more rhythmically consonant over the top of this. Bring feedback down.